My conversation today on Behind the Act is with Holly Carden. She's an illustrator, an entrepreneur, and a world creator. She goes on tour with puzzles that feature illustrations that she made by hand. And today we're talking about protecting our freedom to create by not overcommitting to things, and also about our cyclical relationship with self-doubt and how embracing and championing our own limitations as human artists can help us move forward in this AI-driven world. I'm Seth Schaefer. This is Behind the Act with Holly Carden.
I'm an illustrator, and I focus in high detail cartoon cutaways. So architectural buildings where they're cut out and you can see all the stuff inside. And it was a really popular style in the 90s, particularly of like ships and castles and stuff like that. And Wimble Builder or Wimble Build is the style, which is kind of like the Where's Waldo thing where there's a bunch of stuff hidden in it. And so these are the pictures that I drew as a kid. And so looking back, it makes sense why I draw this stuff. But it's really conducive to jigsaw puzzles. And so I started putting it on puzzles to monetize it and also like to, get my work out there because that's so hard to do outside of just like posting it on the internet. And it's been a really interesting and fun application of my work. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, it feels so perfect that it's like I filled out an order form for my simulation of like what I wanted to spend my time doing in this life. And I'm doing it all right now. So that's a fun way to think about it, but it really doesn't make sense. It's very strange. And I'm very lucky.
It's incredible. Every time I see your post, you're like, states away at some convention.
Yeah, last year I hit the road because when ChatGPT and Midjourney came out, The Matrix was a formative film in my world, and I'm realizing now kind of shaped my whole worldview. And so this is something I've been thinking about for so long. And so when Chat came out and like, oh my God, they actually let us have this, insane in the first place. But then the fact that, it can draw, or it's at least learning the vocabulary of our visual language. Right. And so it just knocked me back. And I was out for 6 months, just like refreshing my browser, looking for new inventions that were coming out like every day. And still like it's such a fast moving and rich conversation. And I'm so conflicted about it. I did not expect creators to be the first to go. We all thought the truck drivers and McDonald's people, right?
Yep.
But, those robots are expensive, and
right.
knowledge work is apparently, well, it is, but it's worth it.
Yeah. What keeps you going right now? And then let's talk about the conflict you have with the AI stuff.
I think a lot of my motivation comes from perhaps I hate to throw around the word trauma, but the experience of being in a cubicle for about 7 years doing sales. Mm-hmm. And I guess, I don't know, I maybe it is a matrix thing, just that resistance to being trapped and running out my time and my day-to-day being a horrible experience. And so knowing that if I crash and burn, the alternative might be that, that has caused me to really work hard. And I think that I'm also really lucky that my particular practice is very unique. There's not many people that draw the way that I do, but also analog and have such a convoluted and perhaps unnecessarily difficult process. But process is king right now, right? And so, right. But that's the main thing that I enjoy about this is I love the day-to-day process of creating these big, crazy drawings.
Yeah.
I never was interested in comics or episodic visual narratives because I just didn't want to draw the same thing over and over, but I'll spend a year drawing the same picture that tells as many stories, ideally. The challenge of each project kind of one-upping my last project, like this one is far more elaborate than the last, and I learned a lot from that last one. So the process of the body of work as a project, but also these elaborate projects that use my project management skills and all these other skills that I learned in that cubicle as I was seething every day. Learning Excel and stuff has helped me in the business aspect of things. So I find that stuff enjoyable, which makes it much easier than it would be for a lot of artists that aren't exposed to that world. And so being able to use my whole skill set is really cool. But yeah, I think that as I look back over all the influences, like I started buying the children's books that I looked at as a kid on eBay, and like I went back and visited my home in Wales and like saw the doll houses that my grandfather used to make and take the front off, and it's like, oh, duh. And then like, castle ruins everywhere. Like I'm seeing all these influences in retrospect, and it just makes so much sense. But I never would have imagined I'd be doing this. But
Right.
The fact that it's fun and I enjoy my day to day is the only reason that I could keep doing this.
You said home in Wales.
Yeah, I was born and raised in Wales, and I
Okay.
came here when I was 10. But, I'd forgotten a lot of that time. But when I do go back to visit family and stuff, when I see other illustrators from that region and what they're drawing, it's all kind of similar. So it's kind of a regional art accent, which has been an interesting discovery as well. But I wouldn't have known all that before because my style is only just now developed,
Yeah. What do you mean by art accent? What's that?
Well, it's kind of like when I look at illustrators from different parts of the world, there are trends in the art. And you kind of see this in a microcosm at like art school. Like, each class comes through and there's kind of like they share ideas and stuff. They're all exposed to a similar data set in college, if you will. And so they're all kind of pulling from similar references, of course, with their background as well. But, when you go to a particular region of the world, they're all, when I was visiting there, I was taking a lot of reference pictures for my current drawing, and just those subtle differences in the fact that, the buildings have chimneys and a red brick rather than, plastic paneling or whatever. And there's an aesthetic to each place in the world. So, it's the same with if you see manga artists in Japan or, all the flat design that you see coming out of America's, UX, whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, the art that comes from the region I'm from is very is very similar to the kind of stuff I'm doing as far as like pen and ink work. As far as kind of there's this feminine roundness to the drawing, and also the influence of like woodland creatures and like castles and these things that now is more evident. And so I actually hadn't thought of the phrase art accent until just now, but it seems like a good way to describe it.
That's cool.
But that's been a nice discovery with the internet. I wouldn't be able to see all these different artists' portfolios without that. So
Right. You earlier said I don't want to use the word trauma about the
that's a weird word. I just started therapy,
clearly,
so that word's getting thrown around.
I was gonna say, okay, awesome. Is that your first time doing therapy?
Yeah, with any kind of seriousness.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's incredible. I love it. I mean,
Is it good?
it really is. I mean,
Because every time I go, I'm like, I don't need that.
with the right therapist, I'll say. So,
Yeah.
I mean, if you find the right person.
She's good.
Okay. Awesome. I mean, it definitely revolutionized my life, and I mean, incredible. But
I get good reviews, so I'm
Yeah.
gonna stick with it.
yeah. So I mean, on the trauma side, I mean, in talking about that, going into the cubicle concept, right?
Yeah.
Like it feels like that's like a fear. It's like you're being driven by the fear a little bit right now, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, I think we always are, right? But I guess we're all going through a realization, at least us creatives, right, that we are being replaced in certain capacities with a terrifically prolific being that will create something,
Yeah.
like, so how have you found conversation with other artists as well, like realizing that us championing ourselves like matters, like not in defiance to not anti-AI, because it's an incredible tool, but like how are you planning on positioning yourself and seeing other artists do the same thing to realize that, I mean, handmade's pretty cool, like you say, your
Yeah.
process,
Yeah, I mean, when I talk to students, I wonder what to tell them, because most of these kids are on iPads with Procreate now and are, solely digital, and they are all being fed this same like first couple pages of the Google image search data set themselves. But I'm I feel like I got in right under the wire as far as being traditionally taught, and not that there aren't people doing that now,
Yeah.
but I think that I'm driven by passion and joy and creative glee as much as fear. But there are a lot of, I mean, I come from a long line of anxious women, first of all. So but I think that helps me, take caution. I just sometimes do it in retrospect, like with a thing after I have to. Anyway, but I don't know. I think I'm thinking of things on a bigger scale than a lot of people are. And that probably has a lot to do with the fact that I have a lot of freedom and time to do that, and nothing else that I just get a lot of time to ingest and consider a lot of these things from a broader perspective, because I don't have kids and family that I'm having to focus on. I'm kind of like seeing things from a wider lens, and I'm actually pretty. I'm really proud of being one of the people included in the base data set of the like I said, the vocabulary or visual language that we're teaching our descendant human consciousness or whatever. And I've caught a couple people who've run my work through AI and put it on a puzzle and sold it on Etsy. And people will notice it and send it to me, so that's cool. But it's really interesting because like someone did it with one of my buildings, and I was actually able to like see how AI did it and what it was able to translate and what didn't make any sense. So it's almost like it was grading my architectural rendering, which was kind of cool. But it hasn't figured out detail yet, so I've still put 1 point for me on that. But I think process is king at this point. Like in anything, like people sit for hours and watch someone draw. So will I. I mean, it's just so relaxing and calming. And, like people still do that with the Cintiq. Like I recently got a Cintiq, and it's very similar.
What is that?
But it's like a big iPad monitor, external monitor, basically. Okay. But I mean, it's something that I've probably needed for years. But I've been on this rinky-dink tablet and stuff. So I've made this graduation to a more direct technology, and it is really nice because I do color digitally, so I need to use it anyway. But I find myself, I've got my drawing table right here, so I find myself hand drawing something, photographing it, plugging it into the sketch, adjusting it. So I'm definitely doing this like
cool. Okay.
On this rough sketch. So the inking part, I'll always do hand by hand because that's the part that I love, is just the line drawing. I feel really proud of being an illustrator at this point in time, because thinking of the ways that AI-generated art and video will be necessary for the next steps of whatever it is we're building, whether it be good or bad. For example, taking MRI brain activity information and using a language decoder to transfer or to interpret brain activity as video. Mm-hmm. Like I've been learning about all these things that require AI-generated video, which, I'm part of the base level data set for, which is kind of cool, right?
Right.
And it got me thinking to this jump that we're making to incorporating this universal intelligence that can also communicate multimodally with all of our knowledge, right? It almost seems like it's the next stage in our evolution, right? And perhaps we're going to be left as an organic husk, as consciousness wafts off into some Asimovian cloud. I don't know. But it makes me think that maybe that's a biological evolution or a biological necessity in the same way that we need to reproduce or feed ourselves or be able to do all these things that got us to this point. Maybe drawing and self-simulation is a biological necessity. And it doesn't necessarily just apply to drawing, but that's kind of one of the more ancient ones, right? Like the caves of Lascaux. Like we were drawing in the image of ourselves. We were narrating our own story. But we also did this with fables and raconteurs and stories around the fire or whatever. But this this impulse to create, and not just create, but to illustrate ourselves and our own ideas and our own story. At the risk of over-aggrandizing the act of drawing or acting or creating anything. I wonder if that is just as important a task as like reproducing and like doing all this other stuff, because in order to get this AI generated video, we had to draw the caves of Lascaux, do the Renaissance paintings, start making photographs and movies and VR, and now translating brain activity. Like, it just seems like a really sensible course of evolution. And so that, on a grander scale, makes me feel like powerful. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so like honored to be part of that conversation, because when I was in art school, when I went in, I didn't really understand the difference between illustrator and fine artist and blah, blah. And I went through 3 years of art history. And not only did I understand that there's no difference between fine art and illustration, I also understood that art history is the illustrated timeline of human history. Now, granted, it's been selected by what we decide, you know, whoever at MoMA is deciding what is important, but that in itself is also a reflection of the zeitgeist, right? And so I forget who the quote is by, but he says that there's something along the lines of the responsibility of an artist is to narrate their time in history or something. And so I think at any point, if the artist is doing that or creating anything that reflects our story, like, that's a contribution to this illustrated timeline and our story as a species.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, I feel great about being part of that. Like, that's so awesome. But at the same time, it's like at the cost of like getting credit for your work or like getting paid or like any of these other things.
Right.
And I know that, like, you know, crediting artists for their, and I have a lot of other ideas about IP and how copyright and things like that are going to adjust in accordance with this. But to be honest, like a lot of the art, like all our art kind of looks the same anyway. Like, human beings, we're not, I mean, we have a lot of varied stuff, but like if you look at Instagram, like 90% of it's the same stuff. It's like, do you really want, like, is it important that everyone knows that you made like that fairy or whatever? It's like, get over yourself, kind of. But, you know, at the same time, like, I'm proud of what I'm creating and it's important. But like, if you think of it on a human scale, like we're giving our contribution to society. Like, this is our job, you know. It's to make pretty pictures, put on jigsaw puzzles, because we need analog art for when the electricity goes down. And we need something to do. Entertainment is very important, a lot more important than people realize.
That's true. That's true. Talk to me about the IP and copyright stuff.
Well, I mean, that's always been something that's dissolved over the internet. I mean, namely, like, you know, the Napster thing and, like, you know, also just other artists ripping each other off. I mean, people have been doing that. You know, there's that fine line between what is inspiration and what is, you know, copying. And it's always been really fuzzy.
Yeah.
You know, and the only reason it wasn't fuzzier is because humans didn't have access to every image ever made. And so now we do that, and we're all sourcing this thing. And so, you know, it only makes sense, first of all. But if we wanted to establish the same sort of IP system that we have, or that same sort of importance on attributing the paid credit to artists, then you could always have some sort of registry, like a doctor database or something, where someone puts in their thing and their style, and AI can, like, identify their style, and it's like registered or whatever. But I mean, to be honest, like, I think that if we just change what we value, like, instead of people getting paid for, because I don't really want to have to wait until Coca-Cola approaches me to draw this amazing picture that I will never be able to afford the time to sit and do by myself.
Right.
Like, I shouldn't have to wait for some rich company to hire me to do it. Mm-hmm. If I can make an amazing picture given 2 years of time, like, I shouldn't have to, like, do some other bullshit just because they can pay me. Like, so, you know, yeah, there's always going to be that situation of people ripping off each other's art. But if we value instead the process and the passion of someone getting able to do, like, man, going to some of these conventions I've been going to and talking to people about their passion projects they're making, like seeing someone be so psyched about that is just so uplifting and amazing. And like seeing people express their talents. A lot of people now don't even know that they're talented because they've never been able to try it. You know, the best opera singer in the world is like at a cashier somewhere. And so I think that if we started changing the value in the way that we ingest this art and the way that we're given access more to the person rather than the product, which of course has its own problems with like celebrity and all this. I mean, honestly, it's going to be disgusting no matter what we do. But I think when I've been talking to other artists, the ideas of changing what we value, having registries for giving legitimacy to certain artists or whatever. But also, I think that people are just going to be able to start seeing, like, just like we have an art accent as humans, like AI has got an accent for sure. And of course, that's going to dissolve over time. But I think that people are going to assume it's AI, get to a point where they assume it's AI until proven otherwise.
Right.
And that proof is the product. Like, I already feel like the process in my work is more the product than the picture sometimes.
Right.
Because when you explain to someone how it was made and the amount of work and stuff that goes into it, that's when their eyes light up, you know. But now that the picture is just whatever, it's the process that is the juicy part, you know.
I haven't heard that, and I love that assumption, and I think you're totally right. Anything that's amazing, people are going to assume it's AI, you know.
Yeah.
Like right now.
And that's fine, you know.
Totally. But that the onus is on you and me and other artists to show that this is how we made it. This is what we did, you know, like, which adds to the complexity of that process too, of being able to make money and survive as an artist, right?
Well, now you have to be more interested than just being able to whip up a picture.
Exactly.
And if the only reason you're doing it is to whip up a picture, then you probably shouldn't be doing it in the first place.
Right. If you're trying to pay your bills.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, we're all screwed as far as like making money doing stuff. You know, it's just a matter of how quickly we can afford to make the switch over to. And to be honest, I don't want to draw someone's terrible children's book idea or some logo that I'm not going to like in the first place. I suck at them, you know?
Yeah.
Like, and I don't know, we're not as good at that stuff. Let AI do that stuff.
Right.
And let these people have access to art creation. Like that family that wants to make a children's book about their dog, they should have access to the superpower of creating images. But they don't necessarily care to sit there for 12 hours a day and draw roof tiles like I happen to love. So it's a very different job altogether. We're playing a different sport, you know?
Yeah. I love that you've taken control of your future. You're like, I'm going to make this work, not wait for somebody else to, you know, like you say, like hire me to make it, you know. So I guess talk to me about that process. What's been difficult in growing the business and promoting it? And
I think the difficulty is that the idea is more important than the ability to draw stuff. Because initially when I was drawing like photorealistic pencil drawings, like from photographs and stuff. And I'm like, why am I doing this? I'm not a printer. And so, you know, I don't do much writing and stuff. And so that's why I started illustrating the works of like, well, I'm also, because it's public domain, but the works of like classic writers and illustrating things that people want to see pictures of. Because as an illustrator, it's your job to create pictures that otherwise wouldn't exist. I think it's possible, because I had just rewatched The Matrix not that long ago, and it had been, you know, at least a decade or two since I had seen it in 1999 in theaters at 14. And, you know, a major theme of that is you can mold your own life. And there are these rules. But if you learn the rules and you play within them, you can adapt things, you know? And so I definitely think I've been really lucky. There's been a lot of right place, right times things. Like, you know, drawing a subject that it becomes quite popular, but it's only because I've seen what other people are seeing, and I'm like, oh, that's something that a lot of people would probably want to see drawn, because I want to see it drawn, you know? So I think that helped, and also organic marketing. Like I've never actually done any like marketing. I've run a Facebook ad or two, but I don't know. And so what I've done is write a process blog post about each of my projects that shows like the blueprints and sketches and the various process, because I draw it like a super rough draft, then in pencil, then all in pen, and then I color it in light. So it's a whole thing. And I wanted to show people, look at all this stuff I've done, and so, when you barge into Reddit or whatever Facebook group and you're like, here, buy this thing I made, like, it's kind of like there's a resistance to that. It's like, how dare you? And, having an audacity to think that anyone should care about your project. But if I shared the blog post about it and was more like, hey, look at this cool thing I made that you're definitely going to care about because it's, what you're into. And then it's like, oh, take my money. You know what I mean? And so, it wasn't necessarily scheming for that result, but I think being earnestly invested in the communities and stuff is important. And I actually, over time, have had to learn about the jigsaw puzzle community. And I've been mostly doing horror conventions, but I went to a puzzle convention and I met like all these people who are super serious about it. There's like a World Puzzle Association, speed puzzling, like influencers, and granted it's a smaller community, but there's this whole world. And so I was like, yeah, I've got to, learn as much as possible about this community and what they want from me. Because, I'm great at drawing the pictures, but, getting a puzzle that is good quality enough to put my picture on, like, that was a trial and error thing. But having that feedback from people, from the client base, who is a really awesome community too, is, it's just invaluable, like changing something up every time. And so I think being connected to what you're doing, which is really easy in what I'm doing because it's such a niche, right? It's like puzzles, but horror, but art. But,
How many other artists are doing what you just said there? Horror, puzzles, art, I don't know.
Nothing quite that specific. I mean, I've seen a couple of illustrators who have done that style, like the Wimblebild style. And there's one or two that are doing kind of public domain catalogs like me, like the works of Shakespeare or the works of Jane Austen or whatever. There was actually one who came out with a Dracula puzzle, like right when I was doing it. And I was like, oh, I bet he's going to do Frankenstein next. And he did. And so it's like, but at the same time, like, A, puzzlers need more puzzles, and there's always room for amazing puzzles. And B, like, if anyone had got the other person's puzzle, now they understand the story. So it's like, oh, I want to see another interpretation. And so I don't see a whole lot of competition in it.
Awesome.
Which is great. And also people's drawing styles are so different, but most illustrators license the work out to a puzzle company, but I self-publish. And I think that is, again, in line with like that resistance to the cubicle. Like, I think that, and like with everything though, like relationship decisions, like financial decisions, like I think that I'm realizing on the drive here that I'm really driven by not just a desire for extraordinary freedom, but also fear of like being trapped in any situation. I've carefully crafted my life to be as simple as possible. I live by myself in a cute little house that I can afford. I've got the stuff I need. Like, I have a nice network of people. And the business is small. Like, people have wondered, like, why don't you scale this? Why don't you, start producing puzzles and make this like, $1 million puzzle company or whatever? And for so long, I thought that my resistance to that was fear of making that jump. And I went back and forth on it. But now that, like, I had just recently came to the decision, okay, I'm going to make this jump. And immediately when I think of that, I'm like, man, like, I love the day-to-day of the way I'm running my business. Now, there are definitely some changes I'm making. Like, I did third-party fulfillment, so I'm not shipping all my orders like I used to. I've got people, training people to work for me to do like the non-drawing tasks because I've so far done everything, like down to my taxes. Like I've never delegated anything. And I think that that's just that resistance to being tied to anything. Because once other people are involved, then I have this responsibility to them, you know? And so I'm opening up more to that stuff. But at the same time, it's a beautiful thing to be able to like, I can't draw right now because I'm worried about the future of humanity. So I'm going to go on tour and hang out with tattoo artists and horror nerds for a year. And I need that, I realize. And I don't want to like wake up tomorrow and all of a sudden I'm a puzzle company. It's like essentially being a record label. I don't want any of that. I'm like, no, back up. Just kidding. So like constantly like making sure that I'm manifesting a reality that allows me to live the day-to-day that will make me and the people around me as happy as possible. Because when I am unhappy, it doesn't do anyone any favors. And so, it's our duty to like be as chill as possible.
Yeah.
And in order to be chill, I have to live my life this way. So, it's definitely intentional the way that I've set my life up. But that means that when I make big decisions, like when I replaced my van recently, or this like decision about like changing the branding of the company, or, deciding whether or not to get into a relationship or anything like that I could see is making me pick between two different timelines. I put a lot of weight on those decisions because I've read horror stories on Reddit about, oh my God, I've done this thing and now my life is destroyed. And so I have some anxiety about that. But I'm glad I have that anxiety because it's allowing me to stay in control, as chaotic and manic as it can be. But yeah, I just pray that the people around me have the patience to understand that I'm wrestling with a lot of stuff when I make a decision, and I'm going to externalize all of it along the way.
I love that. I think that's so smart for you to identify before growing too big how much of a trap that can be. And I like your communication because I understand the same thing for myself of not wanting to be in the cubicle. I mean, I literally don't think I guess if I had to, I could, but my brain is not built for that. Every time I've done that, it lasted almost 6 months, It's like, and I can't do it. So, but also you are growing right now. You are adding the people. So talk to me about that process.
Yeah.
Because you've got interns, part-time people.
Yeah, they're interns. And I'm paying them though, because the 2 internships that I had when I was in college were unpaid, and they were valuable in a way, but like I feel weird about internship. A deep mentorship or an apprenticeship may be different, but so I'm paying them for their work, and I'm not really interested in like doing an intern every semester or whatever. Like I'd rather just train someone to do something that will benefit me, that utilizes their skill set, but also allows them to have a lucrative career afterwards, because that's the main struggle, is that jump. And they're not going to be able to get those little piddly jobs here and there to scrap it because they're all AI jobs now. And so I've got this crew of 3 interns. They're great. Intern Ash, intern Michael, and intern Samuel. And at first I was kind of stressed because I felt a little like they were kind of dumped on me because I can't say no to them. I was like, no, I don't want interns. And then they emailed me personally and like were really sweet. I was like, oh my God, I got it. So I took them on, but I didn't know how I could incorporate them in a way that wasn't just more work for me. But I don't know, I kind of analyzed what each of them were good at. I sent them a list of all these tasks and stuff, and I was like, highlight the ones that you think you're really good at and the stuff that you need to learn more about. And so looking at that, I was able to kind of like assign them each a role. Intern Ash, I've been taking her to conventions. She's really good at talking to people. she's very organized. So I've got her like creating master lists of different conventions I could go to, looking at different ways I could redesign the booth, gift shops I could reach out to for wholesale stuff, puzzle influencers and whoever that might want to do reviews or unboxing. So I've got her on all that stuff. Then intern Michael is recently getting into photography and is he's got a really good eye for composition and he cares a lot, which ultimately is the only thing that matters with any of these people.
Right.
But I need social media content. You know, I look at my Instagram and there's like no puzzle content. It's all drawing stuff. And I'm like, oh, duh. Okay. And so I set up mentorship with him and a photographer friend of mine, and he went out shooting with him once at a TPAC event. And, you know, he's kind of like, I kind of would like to train him to a point where he could be the social media guy for some companies because everybody needs that right now. And so...
And we'll continue to need to. AI will
totally
not be following you around
for
a long time at least,
Yeah, and I gave them a list of all these AI tools that they can use to speed up processes. And I was like, you know, check into each of them and see which will benefit and whatever. So that's another thing he's doing is like researching these programs for me and teaching me. But then intern Samuel, he's fascinating. He's kind of I think he's just a genius of some sort. And so I've got him on just ideation and product development. And he's already helped me with I wanted to release an HP Lovecraft product because that's the main thing everyone always asks for, but I don't know much about HP Lovecraft.
I don't know what that is.
And he's an author, and he made the Cthulhu mythos, and it's kind of like a horror horror author from like, he died in like the 1930s or something.
Okay.
But I don't really care about his stuff that much. You know, it's very flowery and but very cool monsters and stuff. And so I had done a painting. I wanted to repurpose that as a puzzle. And I was like, you know everything about Lovecraft. You go ahead and write up the legend and like let me know what I should know and what we should do with this thing. And, you know, within a couple days, he brought back this whole report. And it's like, this is amazing. You know, all this time I didn't delegate because I guess I didn't realize other people were capable of doing stuff good. And so I'm like, okay, now I can let go of some of this stuff and trust. And so now with this little crew, like it is a financial investment, but at the same time, like it gives me the flexibility where it's low hours. And, you know, I'm getting to train them for the specific roles that I need. Which, I mean, it sounds a little diabolical, but, you know, it's stuff they can use later.
Totally.
And so, you know, I kind of agonized over it for a little bit of whether it'd be worth it. And so far it's working great. Like
awesome.
I'm spending more time drawing deep into the next project. And I think because of this, I'll be done with it way sooner. And I'm not sure if I'm just working more and harder because I'm paying someone else to do the other stuff. And so any time spent I'm not working, I'm just like, I could be just doing that. But whatever, it's working.
Right.
And so that's been an important step. And also setting up third-party fulfillment over Christmas of last year. I had to spend a lot of time in Wales and I couldn't keep doing it. And, you know, I had an intern at the time, but his schedule wasn't as flexible and it was Christmas season. And I'm like, damn, I just got to do this. Yeah. And I had been teetering on the edge of like it being financially viable to have fulfillment services with their monthly minimum. And so I was like, I have to do it. And so I did it and it's working out fine. Now, because I haven't had a new puzzle in like 2 years, like, you know, I'm thinking, oh man, I've got to get marketing and stuff ready. But I don't want to like be selling the same 4 puzzles that have been there. Like a lot of people that discover it for the first time and it's new to them. But I'm desperate to get new work out now. So I was like, okay, convention season's over, get back to the drawing table. And so now I'm back in work mode. And it took me a solid like 6 or 9 months of, I mean, all last year, I was just like partying. I could not focus. I had a total creative block, you know, enter the 3 interns and being back from Wales and having some consistency of my location. I just had this burst of inspiration and I was like, great, awesome. My friends are like, you coming out? I'm like, no, I am like so invested. I'm doing like 12-hour drawing a day. I'm back into all my routine and everything. Yeah. And I realized like how just lost and what a mess I had. I mean, not that bad. I'm exaggerating, but like compared to how I feel when I'm in that work mode and in the project, it just, I mean, it is very up and down. I even have a blog post about the existential distress of intense drawing projects, because just with any extreme project, like there's up and downs and stuff. But the more times I do it, the more I understand the emotional waves that I attach to it, because I feel things very deeply.
Yeah.
And so I get to trust it. And so now when I do need rest from whatever big thinking that I've been doing, I will either like take the break, or now I do conventions, I can just go on a tour instead. So it's nice to have those options.
Have you, sorry, just thinking about the interns and building, they're building out their jobs kind of, and you're like trusting in that. Have you thought about adding like standard operating procedure style, like manuals that you can then like hand off to the next people, so that when they leave, you're not like, I have all this freedom. And then you're like, crap.
Yeah.
I'm doing it again. I don't
No,
know.
I've been trying to be very careful about not training someone irreplaceable. And so any of the new stuff that I've got them researching or learning, like they're teaching me. But I do already have documentation for some of my processes, like, basic, shipping orders and all this stuff. And then as far as like typical jobs they would do, like setting up files for a manufacturer and adding bleed lines and all this stuff, I've got documentation for that stuff as well.
Right.
But so far, I haven't had many tasks that aren't pretty straightforward. But I have been writing creative briefs for them.
Okay.
I've got like a production schedule that goes through 2026. So it kind of keeps people on the same page. But, when I was in the cubicle, I did a lot of like QA and training, and like, I wrote the whole 150-page manual for a company, which was later disgraced and shut down by Medicare, but they had excellent documentation.
Okay. That's awesome. Yeah.
But yeah, I'm applying a lot of those skills that I learned before, and having these interns here and writing these creative briefs and laying out the schedule. It's just like when you're teaching and you realize how much you actually know.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, like I do have a solid idea of the future, these next couple of years anyway. I on purpose don't plan anything more than 2 years out. A lot of my decisions in life are influenced by the collapse of civilization that we're witnessing. So, but yeah, once I had that all put together on paper, then I'm like, okay, the next step is to go ahead and like get some branding and social media and marketing and stuff out there. But it's easy to get swept away by what everyone else is doing, and this blueprint of websites and Instagram and whatever that's already there. I think that can sometimes like lead me off course a little bit. And so I have to keep realigning and remembering, no, this is the core of what I'm doing. I am an illustrator, not a puzzle company.
Yeah.
My body of work is the product. My process is the product.
Yeah.
Because, I'm scared of waking up and like I've got this snappy mainstream, beautiful puzzle line, but it's just like everything else. You know what I mean?
How long does it take to do a puzzle? I mean, like the whole process.
Yeah. Well,
and did you say you have? Sorry to interrupt, but you said you have 4 right now. Is that right?
Yeah, I have 4 designs right now, and they've taken longer each time because they are more elaborate each time. The first one was one story in one building, and I knocked that out because I made it because I didn't have any work. And so I was like, what's a dream project? I did that in maybe like a month or 2. And then the next one, because at that time I was still doing commission work, and so I was kind of doing it in between. But I would say that it probably took about, 6 months to a year. I mean, anywhere in there, because I was just dipping in periodically. The Dracula one I had to stop halfway through because I was hired to do a board game. And so that was kind of frustrating because I was desperate to get back to this. But again, if I were to do it all in one go, probably about, 9 months, a year. I don't totally know. But this time I'm being very diligent about tracking my hours and taking notes of everything I'm doing. So it'll be clearer. But for example, this next puzzle, I'm working on the super rough draft right now, or the rough draft. Then next is inking it, then coloring it and lighting it. I hope to have that done by the end of the year and putting it in production in January, and hopefully have everything delivered and ready to go by the end of September, so that I can ship them out for Halloween. So
Okay.
that's kind of the timeline I'm looking at. So a late 2025 release of that.
Okay. Cool. So Halloween of next year.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. What? Talk to me about that blog post you mentioned, the existential cycles.
Oh, yeah. So that was one of the first blog posts I made. I did that while I was interning with Anderson Design Group. Actually, I'd drawn this big map of Nashville, and it really didn't match the brief of what he wanted. He wanted some sort of pamphlet or something. And of course, he ended up with this 18 by 24 super detailed map of Nashville with like every business in the whole city. And so on my website, hollycarden.com/blog, there's a post making the Nashville map or something like that. And when I started out, it's like this grand idea. I'm like, oh, it's going to be so awesome. Can't wait to dig in. And then, of course, there are these waves of, oh, I've forgotten how to draw. Like, this looks awful. Like, I don't remember how I even did this the first time. Like, how, can it? And then also just looking at the sheer scope of work that I have left. Like, I haven't even started inking yet, and I'm basically drawing the same picture like 5 times over. And so just thinking, like, is it even possible that I can finish this? Like, and what if it looks bad when I'm done? And then, of course, there's all these other existential things, like, am I contributing to society by sitting here and drawing this dumb picture for an entire year? Like, shouldn't I be doing something more useful, like being a doctor or teaching or something?
Oh, man.
And so I escalate in everything. And this is, like, it would be
bad
really
self-talk.
nice. Yeah. No, if only I had just a business partner or anyone else who's like invested as much as I am in this company, just to like ask any questions to. Because I've got my council of very smart friends and family, and they're all very generous and they give me feedback and stuff. But for the most part, they're just like, you always do the right thing. You're doing great. And I'm just like, oh, fuck. I wish it was your money. You know what I mean? But
How do you get out of that? I mean, how do you get out of that negative cycle?
Oh, yeah. So after I've spiraled a little bit, and of course I'm still furiously working on it the whole time, but I do a lot of stress texting to my my sisters and mom group thread. My close friends get a regular dose of my stress texts. I do try and spread them out so I'm not exhausting any one person. And now I use ChatGPT a lot for that. I use the Cove voice, and I run it through him first, and then I say him because mine's a guy. And if there's any residual panic, I then will delegate that to my friends and family to help me through. But again, they know how to, like, I'm pretty self-soothing after I get a couple of those texts out. And so I realized that everything I make is going to be garbage to me until it's like 80% done. And so, I'll have my up and downs throughout, but as long as I trust, one of my mantras is trust the sketch, right? Because the original sketch is, sometimes I'll veer off course, is like, just trust the sketch. As long as you trust the sketch, it's going to be great. And then also just remembering that this process have worked 4 times. Because when I first started, like, I didn't really know. Now I have evidence of what I'm doing and the fact that it does get better each time. And so just trusting myself for that. And so when I get to a certain point where I'm like happy with some of it, or I'll just get really into the zone and be excited. Like yesterday, I was really psyched about being able to draw trash cans and dumpsters because I'm, adding trash to the drawing at this point. Because another belief I have is trash is the answer to making an image really come to life.
Okay.
If you're representing today. And so I was really psyched about drawing these trash cans. And so like just those days where I'm just really enjoying the process and the craft of what I'm doing, whether anyone sees it or not, like those are really, really empowering. But also just when I wake up knowing what to do every day, like I know that this is what I'm drawing for the next 12 hours and not having to think about it and just being able to let go and enjoy doing it. Yeah. And so when I start thinking about these things, basically when it starts looking good, and it looks good and bad, and it weaves in and out of trash and superior. But yeah, that last 20% is just like creatively, like to the point, like when I'm sending in the final files to the manufacturer or getting ready to post it or whatever, like I'm talking physical, visceral, shaking, like I'm on some crazy uppers or something, like totally sober. Like, and there's probably a lot of downsides to reacting so emotionally to everything that I do in life, including my work and my business, including having this like probably unhealthy relationship between my actual self-worth and what I'm producing or my ability to produce it. Lord help me if anything happens to my hand or eyes. But at the same time, I think the fact that I'm so invested in it and it is such a process, not just a technical one, but also like an emotional trial makes it more interesting to me, of course,
Right.
because I'm going through this like journey of not just learning how to light something better, how to apply line weight in a way that conveys distance more, but like also how to like not cry like a bitch when it doesn't work out one day, you know what I mean? Or like figuring out things I can do when I'm like doubting that I can even be an illustrator anymore because I suck today. Like, what can I do instead of doing that? Because I know I just need to sleep it off. So like, learning these little practices for the way that I catastrophize and make drama for myself, which by the way, mostly takes place inside my head silently. So I'm not like necessarily,
Sure. No, I mean,
spraying this on everybody
I know,
around me.
I hear you on the doubt thing for sure. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like so easy to doubt. And then you think about somebody else, if they were saying those things to you, you'd be like, shut up, you're doing great. Like, keep going. But it's so easy to feel like that's completely the truth that you were terrible that day or whatever,
Yeah, but I think that, that can, there's a balance there because sometimes I need a little tough love. Like my mantra about, getting up on time, going to the gym, doing the amount of work that I'm supposed to do is stop being a bitch, like, because sometimes, I need to give myself some grace and not be hard on myself. But sometimes I'm just being lazy, like get up, go do it. You'll feel better. You will. And so I try to strike that balance. But, at a certain point, it gets mean. You know what I mean?
Right.
And,
Right.
but like, I'm learning, like, God, I'm almost 40 and I'm still like learning my own propensities and what I need to hear in order to like do the stuff I want to do without, and also be like passionate and psyched about it without letting it be like detrimental to my like relationships and like lifestyle.
Right.
But I'm doing okay so far. And I think that, overall it's going swimmingly. But yeah, I'm just like, I don't know, the terrain feels rockier when you're driving it. You know what I mean?
What advice would you give to young illustrators that are just getting into it?
Drawing as much as possible because, when I'm looking at student stuff, the ones that are super talented and have technical drawing skills, they don't necessarily care as much as people who are not as strong a drawer. But, there is definitely talent involved with being a good artist. But a lot of it, just like anything else, is just practice. Like, we're just soggy, wet robots, and we can program ourselves just like in the Matrix. But, if I wanted to become a proficient chef who can like chop stuff really awesome and stuff like this, I might not have the most sophisticated palate, but if I spend enough time with other chefs and with people eating the food and, running the restaurant and doing all this stuff, I can learn what tastes good, right? And so I think that with anything, practice and consistency is the most important thing. Now, I've heard in response to that, like, I want to have balance, but I also want to do music, or like, but I really enjoy taking time to play video games also on the side. It's just, because I need that in my life. And it's like, that's great. I mean, you should do that if that's what you want for your day to day. It really just depends how bad you want to be a good drawer.
Right.
So, there are people like David Goggins, who is just like absolutely mentally ill, like, running on bloody stumps because he just wants to be like the most intense runner in the world or whatever. And that's fine. Respect. But like, there are a lot of people who don't want to, not have kids and a family, or they won't have pets because they want to be on the road, or is willing to do high risk things like, order 10,000 jigsaw puzzles with no idea whether or not you're going to have 10,000 jigsaw puzzles in 5 years or not. And so, it just is a matter of what you want your day to day to look like, and is it worth the result? Because like, I feel bad for people who spend their whole life trying to become a doctor, and then they hate going to the ER every day. Like, they just hate doing it.
Right.
And, if you want to be a really good drawer, but you don't want to spend all your time drawing and becoming excellent, do something else.
Yeah. What is next in the world of illustrating? I mean, generally, like what does the future look like in your mind? Having a focus on AI and understanding of that world, like who rises to the top?
I think that ideas are the most important thing now. Like I said, the gates to image creation have been opened. So far, illustrators and artists have had a superpower, of being able to print our idea to paper, or someone else's ideas. That's no longer the commodity. And it does it faster and better, So I think that I think the role of the image creator is going to change, and the people that are just pumping out pictures of whatever, they're no longer needed. And I say that as though that's not me. I mean, I'm doing that to a degree, yeah. But I think that, like I said, shifting the focus to the process and the human act of creating.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, I've never really been that like here or there about that. People are like, oh, there's this soft, warm human quality to our work. I'm like, is there? I mean, we're just crappier mid-journeys, like I have less of a, like the reason I have a style is because I have less of a data set, you know what I mean? I'm working from very specific references. But at the same time, I'm able to adjust. I'm able to change things as I go, whereas, the artistic aspect is the hardest part of these drawings, is
Mm-hmm.
knowing what to draw and where to draw it,
Mm-hmm.
and why to draw it. Like,
Right.
nothing being arbitrary. And so I think just having richer and deeper ideas will be really important. And guess what? There are a lot of people with really rich, amazing ideas that can't draw. And now they're going to be able to get to create stuff. And I'm really excited to see what those people have to draw.
Yeah, but I also think that fingerprint that you have from your limited data set that you get to apply through your limited skill set, right,
Mm-hmm.
is what makes your stuff valuable. If you were to add more to it, it would make it less valuable because it
Or,
doesn't.
I mean, like, kind of like in my new puzzle that I'm working on now, it's not enough for me now to just draw the novel Dracula like the last time, and I incorporated history stuff and a 3D rendering of the castle, and it's like, oh, that's great, whatever. But I don't, like, the next step needs to be something more interesting than that. Like, the artwork's still going to be similar, like it's the same style, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
but that's just the picture creating part of it.
Right.
There are a lot of people that like my work because the picture's pretty and well drawn, but a lot of the people, they already have this deep interest in something, and they want to see other people's interpretations of it. There's a big responsibility in illustrating someone's stories that, this little kid is going to think about Edgar Allan Poe, and my drawing is the one that's going to pop into their head, just like the children's books that you read when you were a kid.
Right.
And
I think it's really cool that what you just said, like you are talking, I mean, the future of illustration is that you are baking into the heads of humanity the way that they visualize characters. That's
Yeah.
freaking awesome. Yeah.
totally. I mean, it's like now I don't know, maybe a lot of people don't care as much about that. I think that it requires having a certain reverence for the human timeline and our position on it, and a deep consideration for the future of it. Not that anyone can predict, but the fact that that consumes most of my brain space all of the time, I think that that is kind of a necessary state of mind to look at it at in order to be excited about any of it,
Yeah.
And I mean, there's terror involved with that too. Like, there's a very real possibility that we're creating, the meteor that wipes us out, right?
Sure.
But ultimately, I don't know, I think that we're in the most important moment of human history.
How do people champion you and other artists? Like, what would your advice be?
The best ways to support other artists right now would be to, of course, like, buy their products. But I think that sharing their stuff with people matters. Because there are influencers that can help curate our algorithms for us. But ultimately, if you know someone who would be psyched about an artist, like, send their link and be like, dude, this dude's making some incredible stuff.
Yeah.
And, I do that all the time, mostly with music. Like, I love music and, like, doing Spotify blends with my friends and stuff. And I love it when people would, like, be like, hey, look at this band I found, or this song, you would really like that. It doesn't have to be a chore. And I mean, if your friend sucks, like, you don't feel pressured. But if your homie is doing some amazing stuff, it means a lot to, like, not even just post online, but maybe, like, sending it to, if your friend is super into sneakers and an artist is making these amazing illustrations of sneaker collections, send that guy, because you're doing everybody a favor.
Right.
That guy needs cool sneaker stuff, and this artist needs cool sneaker fans. And so, that's just, like, basic networking. So if you can be the electron or whatever that fires to spread the word, I think that that's the most important thing.
If you enjoyed this episode, please consider sharing with other people you think might gain value from it. My name is Seth Schaefer. This is Behind the Act.